you might call me woke, right? You might consider me. I'm going to take a guess and to think that you think I'm probably like ultra progressive, ultra left, like all these things, right? Okay. My friend group is none of that. My friend group is people from high school who are like, I mean, like they might have voted for Trump in 2016.
MAGA, yeah.
Taking a step back, I think that sex education in the United States is really bad. It teaches shame. It like prevents us from talking and engaging with it. And so like I just had so many weird hangups. As a man who like went through the American system, I totally see how men are so fucked nowadays and how they walk out and like how many women are like, men are terrible these days. I'm like, yeah, like I know why. It's like, why do we need to do these things where like height specifically is such a universally advantageous physical attribute in so many things that we have. And again, that is just taken for granted as fine. To me, that's fucking boring. What is cool about YouTube, and again, what I feel is like so empowering, is like it is a democratization. It is where you and me can have conversations and where we can be super real. And if people are looking for a real connection, which is what I think a lot of people are looking, especially like as our countries kind of get more fucked up, as like capitalism kind of gets more late stage, more like the shit just kind of like gets worse and worse. Like people are just like, please show me something real. Like stop lying to me about the way things are, you know, like I feel like it's
apologies for my setup. I mean, it's almost embarrassing to look at the quality of our cameras next to each other.
Look, I have 150,000 subscribers almost. I should look like this. I had this at like 10,000 for some reason. It was really stupid.
Wow. Well, I'm closing in on, I mean, just, I'll tell you this just so that before we start, you can have some background. I'm only just about closing in on 2,000 subs.
Oh, I looked.
And it's only been like a year and a bit. So even for me just to have the audacity to ask for your time is outrageous. So thank you so much for even considering being here. Like I am still a little bit starstruck.
I had 10,000 less than a year ago. So I totally know the 0 to 10,000. It took me 5 years to get from 0 to 10,000. So I totally know that feeling and I'm empathetic to it. So, and you know what? I like to talk shit anyway. Honestly, I love doing like this type of content because it's just so much easier than what I actually make. So it's totally fine.
So before we dive into the real drama, let's talk about shorts. I can see you're absolutely killing it with shorts. And from the question from me is it worth the, I mean, monetarily, I'm sure it's nothing, is it? But is it bringing you in views and subscribers and interaction? Would you say it's worth it doing shorts?
Yeah. So, how much do you want me to divulge that I'm like a YouTube nerd and that I am like very much like business minded and like very analytical? Because I'll tell you the whole thing.
We can take this off the record. I'm happy.
No, I'll tell you the whole thing. No. I'm just the length. Okay, so here's the reality. I saw when shorts started to come out. I was already looking at TikTok and Instagram, and I was like, I was like I said, I was struggling. I was sub 10,000 subscribers. I was like on the 9,000, about to hit the 10,000 mark. And I'm like, I'd been just struggled with like getting my long form content to hit, even though I felt like it was really high production. I felt like compared to other stuff, it was really good. I have never been good. The problem is I'm not good at making thumbnails, and I didn't really understand things like retention. I didn't really understand how important that was. I hadn't kind of evolved and figured that stuff out largely. Sure. But so I kind of, in my own frustration, I was like, I kind of like made a life change where I was like, I quit playing like WoW. I was wasting a lot of time on WoW. And I was like, I'm going to get better at YouTube, and I'm going to start like doing like, I'm going to look and see what works. And I realized with shorts, you don't have to create thumbnails. And I just tested out. I made like 1 or 2 random shorts of like goofy shit. And one of them randomly popped off after like 6 months. And I was like, what? Like, what is that about? And as I started to look more at the and think more about it, I realized that a lot of my content could be broken down. I could make like you're talking about using this to create multiple types of content. I realized that I could use the same research and studying that I was doing, because I was reading this book called Twist of the Wrist, which is like a motorcycle training book, and it has a lot of very like formal technique that people don't really talk about in the motorcycle community. It's a lot of it is just very like people just talking shit, which is part of why I'm trying to like correct and get people like real information that is like based in facts and reality and like data. But I was like, I can break this into 7 shorts in addition to releasing this, and that'll just kind of be my experiment into this content. And like, I was blown away by how quick people connected with it, and like how quick I was getting subscribers off of it, and like how quick that kind of happened. And the fear I had was that it was going to be like useless. So this was pre-monetization though. I was doing shorts because I also realized that other I looked at my other competition, things like there's like other giant, you know, not even competition, but other motorcycle channels, and realized that none of them were doing shorts. Not one of the big ones was doing it. And I said, this is a market opportunity. This is, yeah. And I was like, and it's on YouTube. And I was like, and I started telling all the creators that I knew that I was like, this is the thing. And also from the, like, just going back to like why I create just to tell you, like, I created a YouTube channel. If this isn't obvious, I create it to like, I like to make content to actually help people. Like that's my goal, is I like to teach. I like to utilize the hard lessons that I've learned, unfortunately, like through trial and error and sometimes pain, and save people that. I did a bunch of experimentation with shorts and was like, this is the way. I'm like, I feel like this is actually the best way for people to learn a lot of these concepts, because it's not long, right? You can only hold people's attention for so long. It's hard, you know, like the longer an essay gets, like I watch 2 and 3 hour essays because I love, like, I'm so, because when you know a lot, you kind of need to you need to like get into the depths of it, right? And that's what I need to like get into, the things that I'm like not already like that I haven't already kind of figured out, like through all my other like watching other content. But like shorts is accessibility, and that is how I looked at it, is like, if I want to be an accessible channel, if I want to support inclusion, which is a really big part, like that's a big thing I want to create in the motorcycle community. I want to take it from being a guy's thing that is this like reputation of toxic masculinity, and instead bring it into like an everybody thing, because I actually think that motorcycling is like a microcosm of like society, basically. Like, are you willing to take certain personal sacrifices to make a better society, and think more holistically and systemically? But yeah, so like I was like, shorts is how I'm gonna get there, and I just got really good at it over time. The other cool thing about making short content is that you make them really fast and you iterate. So when I made mistakes, or when I found something that worked or didn't work, I just either abandoned the stuff that didn't work quickly and added the stuff that I did. And it made me really good at just creating videos of like, you know, like beginning, middle, end. Like, what is your payoff? How am I retaining people? Like, what graphics do people need? Like, and so like from that perspective, I think shorts is awesome to make you a better creator. Like, that is why I encourage people to do it. It's simply just for that. You will probably get growth as well, because again, you're also losing, I don't know if you know this, but like these giant channels, like they spend like lots and lots of money. There's a lot of effort that goes into thumbnails, and there's so much psychology. They're creating like 20 different versions and like alpha, right? That's insane. You and I can't ever compete with that, which is the other reason why I was like, what if I just eliminated that and was like, okay, you're right. It's a more level playing field as well. So there's a million reasons I recommend shorts, but like, yeah, that's what's been really good for me. But actually, I'm actually looking at going back and realizing that the 2 long form videos I made, which we're going to talk about, the reason that we're talking here are the trans ally video and the one about trans women in sports. Yeah, like those are the only 2 long form videos I've made in like a year, and they are both way more successful than any of the ones I had, and I think I've had more people connect with them than any of my other content. And so it's shown me that like I should take another stab at these longer form videos, because I think I now can tell that story in a way that people will connect with and like watch. So
for sure, that's fascinating. That's really fascinating. And I think that from the little amount I know about YouTube, again, I'm not a veteran, but like I can tell already enough to completely get what you're saying. And when you said that shorts would you know, it improves the creative skills set in general of how to make a cohesive narrative in a short period of time, because it's easy to do that in an hour. You might do it by accident in an hour, but can you do that in 16 seconds? And that's really fascinating. And I've never even thought of it like that. And I have already been a little bit convinced that maybe I'll give shorts another go. I think I had that in mind, and I did a few shorts based on the kind of subject of the week when the channel was still very, very early on, and it just felt very disjointed, very just kind of disconnected. But I think I have already grown myself a little bit as a creator. But for me, the niche that you mentioned, because as well, everyone now is doing shorts, is also very competitive, and to even be seen, you have to just be successful from the get-go, or get lucky, like you say. Well,
Do
that's how I
you?
feel anyway.
Let me tell you that I actually don't think any of that's true. I think I mentioned this, but I could show you the video that I made, and then 6 months later was it like went from 0 to 500,000 views in a night because the algorithm changed. Because what happens is that you're right. There is to an extent, people think shorts is really like, you're right that if you're following a trend, like if you're making about content that is right now, yeah, you're probably right. It's only going to be relevant now. The thing shorts does though is when you create a short, it actually broadcasts that far more than it jams it into a bunch of people's feeds automatically to get data sets. So you'll get like thousands of views even if you're a small channel,
At least,
which
yeah.
starts to build the
I've seen
algorithm for
1,000
your
people.
channel
Yeah.
and helps YouTube connect the audience that you already would create that exists on YouTube. You just don't have it yet because it just doesn't have enough data about you. Like it just feeds the algorithm. So that is the other reason that no, it's not true. Like videos literally will blow up later. You don't really know. You kind of just got to send it in the ether and hope that you're doing the right thing. And that was part of why I just committed to it, because I committed to it. It was like, nope, I'm going to make shorts until my fucking eyes bleed, until I feel like I've gotten to everything. And those shorts started to, it's definitely a multiplicative thing where the more shorts you create, the more it's relevant, because the more it will feed you other shorts to the people that like your content, and will continue to feed that. It's very snowballing. Yeah.
Yes, snowballing. Yeah. And so your shorts would innately then be quite evergreen in context, because like you say, if I were to cover the latest news, no one's going to really find that 6 months later. And if they do, it's going to have quite low engagement. But so maybe then thinking of shorts, I know this sounds really silly, but as a short form version of a video essay that's evergreen, anyone can find it at any point. And the more you build, the more you have in your repertoire, that just is a snowball effect.
You are literally, that was literally my strategy. I redid a lot of my old videos. Like, again, like I took one that was, my first one was that 7-1 I broke, which was out of a book that I wanted to teach people, because I didn't, even though the information's been around for 30 years, I don't think it's good enough. That's exactly, I took evergreen content, and yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm going to really rethink this. That's amazing, because that's different to how I would have done shorts and have done before. And
nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking. I feel like I'm like ahead of the game anyway.
For sure. But like, it's clearly TikTok has changed the industry for sure. But I think that it's still in that kind of unstable element of rapid change. And so when it does settle down, it's going to have a place on this platform, especially YouTube, for short form content. And so to have like a long-term success with it, I think is key. And on that note, I've been dabbling more in YouTube live streams, and I've found in a kind of, in the other side of things, a similar success in that I will prepare a live stream of like 2 to 3 hours of the latest news, what's happening in the world, clips ready for me to react to. I will sit down at the same time every week. I get regulars already that come and sit and watch. And then I will edit those out into episodes that come out later. So like, do you know the Majority Report?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like how they do things. They'll do their live and then they'll release clips.
Or episodes. David Pakman, or like, these like, yeah,
almost like a news channel. Mm-hmm. Not that that's what I'm trying to be, but and I found a similar level of like that's really worked for me, and I think that's also a link, isn't it? It's like
putting out a lot of content, putting out more content is good. Like it's the most effective growth strategy, just putting out as much as possible, which is the other reason shorts is more effective than regular.
It's really good, and that would then match. Okay,
yeah,
I'm gonna definitely rethink shorts. The amount of people that have told me to do shorts, and I've been like, oh, not right now, and then I just speak to you for 10 seconds, and I'm like, yeah, convinced.
Well, like I said, I did a lot of thinking on it, and like I spent a lot of time trying to convince all the creators that I love. I was like, hey, it's cool you made a 3-hour video. Can you like summarize some key points? Because I feel like if you care so much about people hearing your message, like that's not doing it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's doing it for me, right? And I care enough, so I consider myself like a transmogrifier, like a vessel to kind of bring that to other people, because that's my skill set.
Let's dive into some questions then. So, as you said earlier, I of course found your channel through the trans content, and then I backdated and learned so much about motorbikes that I never thought I would need to know in my life. I've never ridden one in my life, but that's how it works. So yeah, I'd love to focus on those 2 videos. So kicking off then, so you talked in the first video about your ascension, as you described it, to the trans, to being a bit more trans, of a trans ally, understanding about the LGBTQIA+ community. If you could speak to yourself before that initial ascension, a few years ago, what would your message be in a very kind of simplified way? What would you say to yourself?
Is it about trans people or about anything specifically or about
Yeah,
generally?
your opinion of minorities, what you do and don't know. Like, is
Okay,
there
so
anything you would say?
okay, because I was gonna say, because if I could go back 20 years, I would just tell myself to buy Apple stock and just keep buying it and buying it and buying it
Oh,
forever.
okay,
That
that's
is
fair.
what I would do to a 20-year-old man. But if I have to stick to like the trans framework or
It's
whatever,
okay. It's in like a dream form. You can't change the course of the world. If you're going to
okay,
do that,
but I can change
like,
myself. Okay,
yeah,
valid.
I'm afraid I don't have that much power. I'm afraid.
Okay, valid. So growing up, I mean, I guess like talking about my childhood, like I was raised by my grandparents. They weren't super wealthy or rich. Like we were one of my grandfather was a trucker, my grandmother worked at the post office. So very blue collar like like family. They filed for bankruptcy at a point. Like I definitely remember that, even though I was like 9 and didn't know what the hell was going on. I had my father was like in and out of jail for drug crimes, like dumb bullshit, weed, like the normal drug war bullshit we have here, like dumb stuff like that. But it like I was a pretty shy kid. I didn't wear like nice clothes. Like I was popular because I was athletic and I was good, and like that, doing that like got me friends, and like that was how I was connected to a lot of people. But I connected with, I distinctly remember like connecting with some of the kids that were considered like weirder. Like I remember thinking like seeing kids get bullied and thinking that that didn't feel good to me. Like that didn't look good. Like it was kind of like I don't know, the golden rule just kind of always really felt obvious to me. It's like, why would I ever treat anybody worse than like I would be treated, like, yeah, like that's like, that just always felt like, it's like, if I want respect, if I want to be treated well, it always feels like I should be treating other people well. And I think like I've always kind of generally had like that mentality, but there have been times just like anybody else, like that I've like, I stray from that path. I talk about it in the trans ally video. Like I distinctly remember, again, being bullied for, or being called gay a lot. And like that, like a lot, like a lot, right? Like to the point where like people, like I kind of just had to tolerate it and take it for the most part. But like there were a handful of times where it became like really, where I, would lash out or would yell at people or whatever. But like that feeling of like being bullied, I guess like that, I just kept that with me. And like, I never wanted to do that to other people, but like it also, the reality is that trans women specifically, in the same way that like gay men, like they just made me uncomfortable for the same reasons of like, I think that like as a kid, one of the big, taking a step back, I think that sex education in the United States is really bad. It's just really bad. It's really conservative. It teaches shame. It like prevents us from talking and engaging with it. And so like I just had so many weird hangups. I was ashamed of my body. Like I never wanted to be naked in front of people. Like like I can remember times of like just deep embarrassment, like around stuff like that. And it's just like we had a swim class where everyone in the class had to go like get naked, and me just being like, so like, I'm a 4th grader and I'm just like anxious and scared, and I'm scared like I got a small dick, and I'm scared that like just all that, like why is a 9-year-old like worrying about that type of thing? Yeah, like but that's how like so that is what I attribute a lot of my problems to. Is just like I just wasn't well educated. Like my grandparents never engaged with me on these things. Like I was a latchkey kid. Like I just kind of left and would be like gone all day, and like nobody really cared or paid attention half the time, like unless I was gone like for days at a time, or I made a commitment to come back. Like nobody cared. So like that is like the environment I grew up in. Was public education was my like basically my entire formal education. And so like, and there was a lot of, I mean, growing up in the 90s, right? Like I didn't know a lot of gay people. Like people were called gay, and it was, it had those negative connotations. So I guess I would go back and tell myself like, hey man, like the things I would tell myself would honestly be about like just live your values. Like don't worry about what other people think. Like what are they going to do to you? Why do you give a shit what they say to you? Why do you care if you're gay? What does that matter at all? It would be around changing my mentality towards
Right.
those things, because I feel like I did have the right values at my core. I just wasn't confident in myself. I wasn't a confident person, like, at
Mm.
all. I cared what other people said. I let what other people felt about me and say about me impact me in ways that today I just don't. So I think that's where I'd go. Yeah.
That's amazing. I think as well, to see someone so self-aware is really refreshing. I think that, like you've said, because of the education system that we have, and the is it meritocracy, where it's based, everything is based on merit.
Meritocracy.
Meritocracy, that's it. It's, people are so scared of their flaws and scared of what they don't know and scared of being wrong, and it's so refreshing to just to see someone own that and say, be who you are. Doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter. Why do you care if you were gay? Obviously, in this hypothetical, as a kid, when you're questioning. Good for you. It's so funny hearing your story, and obviously drawing a parallel. Someone that had an education in a Western, obviously, country, but it was Britain. Very similar, very similarly conservative, very neoliberal, and taught shame, and like, if I'm not being productive, I have no value, and you just go from school to work. And I had similar experiences being bullied for being gay. And the difference being is that I think my strength in my character shined to the point that people that were kind of questioning or that didn't quite understand it saw that as like a threat. So it's really interesting to see a similar kind of situation of how we both got bullied for something, but I felt like, bullying someone for being gay, or even insulting someone, calling them gay, was just this kind of just general term for, like, you're a bit different to who I am, and I don't know how to deal with that. So I'm going to call you something and make you feel lesser than yourself.
I mean, really, it to me nowadays, like, it just feels like there's a word of the day that's like the popular
Yes.
one that kids use, right? Like cuck. Cuck was super common. Cuck,
Yeah.
cuck, 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 right? And before that, and I don't know if you want to blurt this whatever, but like retarded, right? Like that is just like a thing that, like, I was just listening to Limp Bizkit today, and like there's a song called like Rollin'. There's like a Rollin' song there that I remember as a kid like listening to, and there's a whole part at the very end that I forgot existed where Fred Durst is like, everybody there just get retarded, and he just keeps like saying it over and over. It's like, wow, we just like said that word constantly, like, in culture.
Well,
and like it sounds dumb to me in 2023. It sounds like really ignorant. It sounds stupid.
Weird.
Like it doesn't even sound interesting or funny. Like, it's anyway. So like,
Well,
but that's how I see it. It's just like whatever the current thing is, and that's why I use fuck and shit, and like I lean on the default swear words and like just believe in them wholeheartedly. Dog shit, right? Like there is nothing like that is inspecific to immutable characteristics. That is just saying something is. Everyone knows when you say, "Hey, you're a fuckhead." Everyone knows that like what you're saying is like it's a pretty severe thing. You know what I mean? Without being racial or sexual or anything. And that's why I can't get along I can't get along with people who like get tied up on like mad about not being able to say like the F slur and stuff, or the N word. It's just like, bro, like are you that unimaginative that you can't come up with a better fucking insult? Like, are you that fucking lazy? Holy shit. Then maybe you shouldn't be talking. You shouldn't be making jokes if you're that fucking lazy, in my opinion. So anyway,
for sure, absolutely, I agree. I think I've never understood the whole censorship of word thing, like, because especially learning a second language where those words, even the way you insult someone is linguistically completely different, and like you don't just get to rely on a single word that insults them. That's easy. That's like basic. You're a basic bitch if you do that. Like,
yeah,
you have to like insult a mum's cooking in Japan, or like like, oh, you're not dressed very well. Oh, burn. Like, that's like the worst thing you could do in Japanese. So I completely agree. I think most swear words are completely lazy, and as well, like, language to me is so liquid, and I think the sounding of a word being an insult is just because we've been trained to see that as such.
Yeah.
So yeah, and connecting that to like, being bullied for being gay and stuff like that, like, as well, especially growing up, I knew I was different. So it never felt like the words per se were the insult. It was the making me feel like I'm different and kind of telling me I am different, because I knew I was. It didn't matter how they did that, whether it was physical abuse or, words or anything. It was like, I knew in myself, like, yeah, I definitely am a bit different. So that's not the problem here. The problem is like, how do I get out of this situation? Because I don't like having my head smashed in. Like, so
I felt different in ways that were not like related to gender and sexuality. Like I felt different in like that I just was more emotional and cared about things more than
Mm.
other people. You know what I mean? Like I had more,
Yeah.
like I didn't know what this was, but like I had more empathy, and like that was a
Yeah.
weird feeling as a man, like in
Yeah.
especially in sports, right? Is like and all these
Mm.
dudes that are just like not don't give a shit about that. So, but like, and I think that's where some of it came from is like queer people or the people that were, nerdier or whatever, like they
Mm.
also had more empathy because they had to, or because they developed it through, whatever. And I think that's also why I kind of have always connected more with groups that are more on the fringes, racially, like minorities, because they have to
Mhm.
deal with more shit, so they have more empathy. They like have been through more trauma and situations. They've had to process more things, and it just
Sure.
made them people that were more holistic and complete, or like, or at least like had more experiences that were similar to what I had had. So,
For sure. And segueing to the next question perfectly. So I think I went through a similar thing in that when I kind of acknowledged the differences I had in me, I saw the world in a very different light. And specifically transitioning from, male expressing to female, the world around me changed as well. And I had never really foreseen that. I knew I would change. I knew mentally I would be the same, but my body would change and my confidence, and that happened. But then suddenly people aren't laughing at my jokes as much. Suddenly people are telling me to smile more. And apparently I'm not capable of opening my own doors. But secretly I don't mind that and I kind of liked it. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. You talked about your experience with gay male attention and how it made you feel. And so talking about like the male gaze, and I might have to use the P word as well, the patriarchy word. How much did it teach you also about the kind of feminist experience and the female experience? Because you don't talk about that as much in the video. And I'm really interested to see, did you kind of get a bit of an understanding about why girls are the way we are?
oh yeah, that was that. Honestly, that was like a cornerstone moment for me. To be honest, again, like I, as a man who like went through the American system, I totally see how men are so fucked nowadays and how they walk out and like how many women are like men are terrible these days. I'm like, yeah, like I know why. Like I totally get it. And they're like, why aren't you? And I'm like, well, I had a different life with a different experience, like that's like I'm an exception, and that's not because I'm great. Like that's accidental and chance in a lot of ways. But like I yeah, like men are just they're shielded from needing to develop so many social skills and empathy because again things are just pointed to them. And like I in the trans ally video, this is an example, is like I have people say like, well, from the starting point of people are like, well, men will always be more physically better than women at everything, period, basically, right? You're always going to start with advantage. I'm like, what if we had
What if I
like
told you?
motorcycle racing as an Olympic event opposed to bench press or whatever the fuck? Like sports are
Absolutely.
shifted towards attributes that men have, and men are so again it's so inert in us that like they don't see it as a choice that was in
Yeah.
their favor. So like that's what I mean, right? And those are things that you're totally right. Like I did not understand, and then as I had that experience, as I had things and realizing, yeah, that was the thing. I was like, fuck, I don't want to do this to women. Like, and the truth be
Yeah.
told, though, it didn't solve it. Like, again, this happened in my like 19. Like, I was still
Mm.
I don't think I really became like, I'm not the person I am today is not the person who I was at 21 or 20, even 25.
Of course. Yeah.
Like, like, I don't know if again I
Same.
don't consider men like really like baked until like 25 because I don't feel like I was really even close to baked. Like I thought I was, I believed it, but like I wasn't. And like now at 37 I'm like, oh well, you're never really baked. Like you're always in a constant process of change and development, and there is no static. And like that's the fallacy, is like thinking that you were ever one thing. Like it just doesn't
Yeah.
work that way.
It's obviously clear how the way you would treat women around you is with a level of equality that is just taken for granted in modern society even today. And I think that, like we were saying about the bullies that would just say a word for someone that's different to them, we're seeing now a kind of backlash from kind of male groups that are saying, hold on, I feel lesser in society, I feel targeted, men can't be men anymore, And I think that that's actually just a level of equality that society is aiming for, is that, yeah, men can't do anything without being held accountable, and women are not going to be, relentlessly, objectively subservient to you just because we're told to. And so I think that the backlash of that is a kind of like, well, we can't even be around anymore. Harry Styles is wearing a dress. And it's like, maybe there is a huge group of men that have not been allowed to be emotional. They haven't been taught to have empathy, like you've said. And it's taken two major life events in both of our lives to even be able to understand that's where we are, by the sounds of things. Which it shouldn't need to as well. Like you said about the education system, we should be being taught how to, deal with our emotions in modern education, but we're not. We're taught hymns and Pythagoras' theorem, but okay.
Well, they expect there's like this giant gap of like what the public school just kind of expects you to learn at home, which is like a lot of like how you deal with conflict. Like the most important thing, in my opinion, is like really for a human being is really to like, how do you manage conflict? Like, are you able to like hear somebody and like internalize it and like assess it yourself, and then like, but integrate that with your own logic and not just take their opinion, but like synthesize that with other opinion. Like, are you able to do that? Or when someone's like, hey man, you made me really mad when you said that thing, do you just blow up at them and tell them to fuck off, and like get mad at them defensively because your pride is so important to you that you can't like, and you're breaking friendships because, you know what I mean? Like that is a thing that I did not learn until I worked retail. Like retail is what taught me to be good interpersonally, like thousands and thousands and thousands of one-to-one interactions where I'm like doing where I'm influencing people, like literally trying to convince them to do specific things, or just shooting the shit,
or not
sometimes.
do certain things, or stop doing certain things.
Yeah,
absolutely. I actually think in a crazy euphorian world, instead of conscription to the military, I think every single person should work a retail job for 2 years after school, and we would live in a happier world. Jokes aside, and I think that you see a different range of people at good and bad points of their day. You learn yourself, like, I'm not in a good place today, I'm being stressier to customers, like, I completely agree. I worked a retail job from 16, and my husband worked as a restaurant manager for a long time as well. And so he saw some incredible things. I mean, he's helped customers have a heart attack and put them in an ambulance and sent them on their way at his day job.
That's amazing.
And then he comes home and then, it's just back to normal. It's like, that's not what you really see in an office. I completely agree. And we're not taught those skills. And like you say, conflict's a really interesting one. And maybe that's why, there's so many divorces that we see. There's so many broken homes. Maybe it's because we're not taught
as a person
how to deal with our emotions.
As a person going through divorce, I can tell you that conflict resolution is a really key part of that reason. Hey, not to scope it out to a current event, but Israel and Palestine, that's a conflict that we haven't really figured out how to resolve in a way that like doesn't require violence. So like, yeah, conflict resolution is fucking important.
We went from your divorce to Palestine well quick, and that was neck breaking.
Thank you. That's a squid tip right there. I mean, like, go ahead and Jim. I don't know what that'll do for me. I had someone reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you talk about Israel Palestine?" I'm like, bro, I make motorcycle YouTube videos. Why the fuck do you need my opinion on Israel and Palestine? No. Why do you need me to fuck? Are you fucking? I can't solve any of this, motherfucker. I got shit to do. Like, what do you mean? Anyway.
It's such an interesting comment on like the kind of social media that we have there, because I've seen the same thing, and I've seen a follower, a creator I follow and love, Khadija Mbao, released a video, and said like, why are we holding celebrities or influencers and stuff to the accountability? They are just people, and they don't have a politics degree and history of like Palestine and Israel, and they don't have no business saying stuff. And I completely agree. I think it's interesting to see that there's that parasocial connection that I say we in the linguistic form, you lovely people are expected to have, and again, that's not as healthy. But
taking back to the trans ally video, one of the ways I ended it before I was talking, I was talking about how to, like, what we should be doing. One of the recommendations I had for people was like, stop watching social media and whatever like the anger moment of the day is, and like text a friend that you
Yeah.
have that you care about, and like you just haven't like talked. Like that is what I have learned. Again, like going through divorce, like going through like hard personal moments for like the first time in like years. Like I had a lot of stability in my life. I was married for like, I'm still married technically, but like I've been married since like 2015. Like bought 2 houses together. Like don't have kids, but like have 4 animals. You know, like I've had this significant stability, and now now my life is like suddenly in jumbles, and like it's this realization that holy shit, like a lot of my best friends, a lot of my family, like is not equipped and not aware of how to help me or support me at all, even when like directly asked. And like, I don't even really know necessarily, you know? And like, it's that realization that like, man, we should really just be helping our homies that like are to the left and the right of us. And that's who we should really focus on, not fucking Israel and Palestine. I can't do shit about that. Sorry, man. Like that's fucked. Like I can help my buddy that I haven't talked to in a while though.
Yes, and at least we should try and do, you know, be aware of the outside world. But like you say, there's an inside world that we're all being trained under capitalism to not talk to. And my husband and I, we moved to Japan and we're talking about having kids. And something I'm so aware of is that like, we're not meant to have children as just us two in society. I'm not meant to be the sole social reproductive, you know, owner of this one child or a family. I'm going to want other people around and other figures and older and younger and siblings and cousins. And it's like capitalism. I mean, obviously we moved, which is separate, but we're not allowed that space, and that's considered weak, and it's considered, you know, a whole bunch of things. But anyway, before we go down the anti-capitalist pipeline, we were talking really well about the trans women in sport, and I had a couple of questions on that. So more, like talking about transphobia in the media a bit more recently to kind of ease us into that. I mean, I cover a lot of US news, more like, you know, dunking on right-wing pundits, I think is what we call it. Similar to Majority Report, I react to a lot of their stuff. It really does feel looking at it objectively from far away, it feels like this transphobic wave is completely manufactured. It's just completely created out of talking points that are specifically difficult to debate. So where do you stand with everything? Are you watching it? Are you trying to take a space away from it? Like, what's your opinion on just the current climate?
My opinion is that, and I don't know if you watched my video. So like the goal of my video was, after watching again and having discussions with friends, a lot of my friends, so like you might call me woke, right? You might consider me, I'm going to take a guess and to think that you think I'm probably like ultra progressive, ultra left, like all these things, right? Okay. My friend group is none of that. My friend group is people from high school who are like, I mean, like, they're not even, I don't even know if they're Democrats. Like, they're like, I don't, like, they might have voted for Trump in 2016. Like that level of like, yeah, like these are people that like I've just known for all my fucking life. And so like, I regard, like, we make jokes like on the context of like, we make way edgier, darker jokes together because we all know each other like in that, but like, that's who I'm engaging with. So like, having those debates with those people, it's this realization that like I'm never gonna convince them. So here was a conversation they had. Like, let's talk about a simpler thing. I think a simpler thing is like, can trans women go into a fucking women's bathroom? That to me is a very simple fucking question. Is that's there to piss and shit and all that whatever, and like they're fucking stalls. And also, I don't understand why bathrooms are fucking separated at all. We have a bar here recently in Seattle, and I walked in, and it was, so at the beginning of it, it was this giant like circular like water thing with like a bunch of different soap dispensers and shit, and a bunch of different like circle, right? And it's giant, it's open, it's very easy, like it's not a big deal. And then you go down, and there's this left and right, there's just full fucking top to bottom stalls. That's it. Yeah. I don't get why that isn't the fucking standard fucking everywhere. I don't get it. I fucking hate urinals. Again, as somebody who has body image issues or just struggles to like, when I get up to a urinal sometimes I'm just like, fuck, if someone's like next to me, it's just like I think part of it's also I think it's my ADHD. To be honest, I think my ADHD, like I start focusing on other things. It makes it hard to be like get to the point of like making my body like do that like semi involuntary action of like taking a piss. Like this is, I'm just realizing this now. I was like, oh, that's probably why.
Not relaxing. Yeah.
But like that, I'm having that conversation with them about that, and they're at the point where they're like, trans women shouldn't go in there because it makes our wives uncomfortable. And I'm like, well, why is your wife uncomfortable? And they're like, well, what if they get abused? And I'm like, what the fuck are you what are you talking about? Like what is, like, they're presupposing this thing where a trans person is just like already a predator. And again, that's kind of where everything starts, right? That's like the core nugget of everything, right? It's that other part, even, oh, this trans, like, it's the classic, like, oh, the man couldn't be good at sports, so they became a woman so they could beat him, right? It's just, it's this extremely base thought process around this, and it's totally fucked up and broken. And so the goal of after having like just so many of these conversations with people and realizing like, I'm not going to convince them out of that. I'm not going to, like, they're like, I can't, like, just because I mean, like, or just the reality of like me saying, hey, I'm sorry your wives are like uncomfortable. I know those people. I don't get that. Like, can they just suck it up? Like, they're not going to get fucking abused. Like, but then then being called like, oh, well, you don't care about women. You're a misogynist. Like, these are like how that goes. So I just tried to reframe the whole fucking thing with the reality of like my understanding of sports, which is that, again, like I came to this like in like writing this. I didn't even realize it at the beginning, but I was like, holy shit, I have this perfect story because I was such a good athlete. I was fucking fast. I'm still fucking fast. I play sports all the time. I'm still like kind of the star of my soccer teams and shit, right? But like it was this realization that like I couldn't compete with it. I got beat by these guys because of a physical attribute that I have always I've always known has been an issue. When I played football, it was a problem. Like, everybody said like, hey man, you're a great athlete. You're just a little too short at 5'8". You're just like, if you were just like 2 inches, 3 inches taller, like you would be in the NFL or you would be this or that or whatever, or you would be D1, you know, like, yeah. And like that realization that is really not different from a trans person being like, you know, you just like, women will just never be, because, you know, physical things that like we can't, and it's just like, nah, man, like why are the hurdles 42 inches? Like, why do we need to do these things where like height specifically is such a universally advantageous physical attribute in so many things that we have. And again, that is just taken for granted as fine. That's just taken, like, that is, to me, that's fucking boring. Like, holy shit, the tall people win at everything. That really makes it boring. I've been watching MotoGP. MotoGP is like world global motorcycle racing. It is so cool to not have to worry about people's physical attributes and like how big they are, and like just to watch the fucking sport and be like, it doesn't matter if it's a man or woman in that. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, it's the machine and it's about engineering. Like, it's all the things that men still care about, like the science and the data and all that shit. It just doesn't involve, if you're fucking taller, it doesn't matter. So
and skill. I have like 3 things I definitely want to say of all of these. We could even come back to the toilet thing because, again, that's a whole other conversation. I think as well, a lot of biological women or cis women have to just learn that like the world is not built around them, and I get really sick of like, protect the children, protect the women, because that's a very patriarchal sentiment, but does that mean then screw over everyone else? And that, to me, that's a very, also like, you know, your children could be trans, your wife could be non-binary, like there are so many problems with that anyway. But coming back to the toilet thing, because maybe we can talk about that in a second. So this is talking about like sports in general. I never liked sport as a kid. I always, especially as a young male expressing like boy in school, basically, I had to leave all of my girl like friends behind, get put with all the boys, have to get changed suddenly in a room full of them into this like shitty rugby outfit. It didn't work for me. It's like muddy, it's raining, it's cold, and then I have to run around a field with all these boys. No, it was like like hell on earth for me. And like all my girl mates are playing netball, and I'm like, oh, Sarah, Stephanie, I miss you. You know, it was horrible. So I always associated sport with pure hell on earth, and I'd never allow myself this, right? Absolute respect to anyone that does. I understand that that's an internal misogyny as well, technically. But so from someone that has no understanding of sport, I cannot grasp why it's so clearly segregated anyway. How in boxing, I think you have like weights, right? Heavyweight, lightweight, because it's basically saying these people are going to be better anyway. So let's put them in their own category. And yet trans women can't play chess against women and men. And so the connection in my brain is so weak, because it's clear that it's just old fashioned systems that are just not changed. Like you said about the toilets, like why do we even gender toilets? If there is an innate danger of putting men with women, then people need to sort that out before trans women or people get even put on the scene. And then the kind of nailing in the coffin of how I know this is just a massive talking point from the right is that trans men are never brought up in this conversation, and non-binary people they wouldn't even grasp that. But there's this boxing boxer called Patricio, I think Manuel or something, or Manuel Patricio, who is a trans male boxer, and he is quite literally smashing it, and he's beating all of his cis counterparts, and
he's taking testosterone. He's taking a banned substance, like in most fucking athletics. Yeah, isn't that hilarious?
Yeah. And it's like, because
but they don't talk about it.
The narrative.
Yeah,
no one's talking about this, and so I can kind of speak on the sidelines quite literally, because I don't want to get involved myself, but I cannot understand how, like you're saying about height, if trans women have an advantage in chess ever so slightly, because apparently male brains are just more competitive or whatever, the garbage that they're coming out with, how can you let someone 6 foot, 7 foot play basketball against someone 5 foot? And I've never understood that, like, if that isn't capped and no one's talking about that, then there's no way in hell that even if a trans woman does have a biological advantage, that's comparable. But then when you consider that there are, especially in our younger generation, Gen Z, which is lovely to see, you've got trans girls that have been on puberty blockers their whole lives, or before puberty, they're on hormones, that like naturally could be 5 foot, and they're not allowed to play. That literally people that I can't get it. Anyway, make sense.
The problem is that it all, and I mentioned this in the video, is that it all boils down to the justification is that, well, we got to figure out who's the best using these set of rules. And the assumption is that those rules are extremely important and set in there. Like the thing you have to just like in a movie, right? Like, are you familiar with the term a MacGuffin, or like the thing you like suspension? You have to suspend disbelief. Like in a movie, there's something. There's going to be a fantasy aspect, right? You're just gonna have to like take it for granted, and like even if it doesn't make sense. Well, that's the thing in sports, is we have to like take for granted a bunch of shit that like doesn't actually make sense the more you think about it. Like why do the rules need to be exactly this and never ever fucking change as we like as society changes, or as like if we want to make the game more competitive? There are literally unlimited. Video games is the perfect example of ways that you can build different difficulties, different advantages, handicaps. Like you could create in soccer. I play recreational soccer. When a team goes down 3 goals, there's an extra player allowed from the other team to go on. Like we can do that in the pros. Like that isn't a thing you can like, but all of that is considered to just be like, whoa. Like and that also goes back to just a general conservatism of people. Like people are generally do not want things to change. Have you ever read a book called Thinking Fast and Slow?
No, but I've heard of it.
Okay. So the book Thinking Fast and Slow, it talks about the different ways that our brain processes information. And there's a very quick, heuristic, intuitive way that we think about things. Again, a lot of the facts and things that we kind of come up with, the talking that I'm doing now, like this is all just intuition. Like I'm very practiced at it. None of this requires deep cognitive thought. But the moment you ask me a question where I'm like, fuck, I got to think about it. It like, you see the processing because we're digging into a different part of my brain that's deeper, that requires energy. And that's the thing that requires people to think about new rules and ways. Like that is not a thing people want to, like, this is literally how I think of it, is just like almost like basic biology and shit that we just don't. it's so normalized that we just don't really think about it, is like, and that's why I don't even really blame people. Like, I get it, but like, come on, like and that's why I'm very focused on trying to be as persuasive as possible and explain things in a way where it's like, hey, here's a clear contradiction. Like, I don't know how to make it any more clear than that. And if you can't square that hole, and people that come to me about the hurdles, they're like, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's not like, that's not like, that's a bad analogy. And I'm like, why are the men's hurdles 42 inches? Just tell me that. And there is no answer, because that is not a thing that is like debated. That is just a thing that is taken as read. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So. And I've seen so many in like video essays and in reaction stuff. I see so many talking points that I feel like the conservatives that are trying to change, take away rights from trans people, they're so constantly taking their conversation and they're putting it further in front of them as a kind of fake conversation over here. And they're like, okay, if we have this, we're going to distract people from what we're really trying to say, which is back here, which is, I just don't like seeing trans women around. It makes me uncomfortable. And sometimes when they're sexy, I get a little boner and I don't know how to deal with it. And
True.
And so it's like, I've stopped having this conversation entirely. I'm not going to debate whether trans women should be in sport. A, I don't care. B, I will fight for anyone to be anywhere they want to be. Equality, if they have an advantage, then we're going to see trans women break in some records. Deal with it. Get mad. Die angry. I'm not going to have that conversation because they don't want to. And they're not willing to say, if the conversation opened up with, okay, we're seeing trans women break a lot of records, how can we facilitate them in a way that makes it fair for everyone? That is a different conversation. That is a conversation I would have, I'd be a part of. But they're not trying to. And a really interesting thing is talking about, going back to the women in toilets. Again, trans men aren't brought up here. And the amount of really masculine, big burly, flannel shirt wearing, bearded men that would have to suddenly go into the toilets, who would you choose? Am I going to make your wife more uncomfortable? Or is, the guy in Taylor Swift's music video who is like the biggest, sexiest man out there, like, is he going to make your wife uncomfortable? And so they don't really want that conversation. They want to hide what they're really trying to say. So I skip all that rubbish and I just have the conversation and I say, oh, so you have a problem with trans women? And they're like, well, no, I just think it's unfair. It's like, well, so that means you have a problem with trans women. Let's dissect that. This is a safe space. This is fair. I'm not going to jump down your throat. But why is that a problem? Do you have the same problem with trans men? And I find that that's actually more helpful because, especially in comments and stuff, you wouldn't be surprised to know I get the odd hate comment. I know. It's crazy. It's a crazy world out there.
Trans person on the internet with hate comments? Whoa!
Apparently, some people have a problem with it. I don't know. But I think that just cutting the crap, as it were, and just jumping to the point and being like, plot twist. Does it affect you in any way? If it does, generally tell me why. I'd love to know. And I find that it does get through a bit more.
The thing to understand is that they're never having this in good faith, because the reality is they know it's not an upfront thing, but everybody making these arguments, the reason that they're making things that don't make sense is because they know that by default they win, right? Because the rules are already X and everything is designed. Our governments, like every program is designed to bureaucratically resist fucking change, and they know they don't have to do that, which is also why I stop having the standard conversations that are fucking pointless. What I do is I've been just divesting from sports that I just like don't like anymore, that don't fit my values. I stopped watching. I fucking loved watching football. I loved watching the Super Bowl. I do still watch the Super Bowl. That's the only football game I watch. I eat Mission tortillas because Mission sponsors Moto America now, and I love Moto America. Like that's how I, as a capitalist person who just exists in capitalism, that is the thing that I feel like I have direct control over, that I can actually do something. Debating these motherfuckers on the internet that are never going to listen, who don't give a fuck, like that is so worthless and not worth my time. So
you can tell the ones that are there to discuss something and maybe like teach me, and then you can tell the ones that I have no intention. But hey, the engagement boosts my video, so I'm happy with that. 100%. I wanted to double check the name of the sport that the wonderful woman in the trans women in sport video that you did. What was the sport called?
Pickleball.
I keep calling it lacrosse.
Pickleball.
I
had a whole section on it. That was my favorite section to do. I thought that was really funny.
I loved it.
I hope it was a humorous. Anyway, My
Yeah,
parents play a
pickleball,
lot of
exactly.
pickleball.
But it's a great analogy of how it's like, it's so, even in the saying of it, it's so fun and happy. It's like, it doesn't have to be this difficult. And I remember the only form of physical exercise or stuff that I enjoyed was dance. Because it was innately for me a female expressive, it was female expression. It was easy to copy the kind of female artists on the screen. And that was always so non-competitive, and it was always about self-improvement, quite literally, in technique and ability and posture. And so I think as well there should be a complete difference between competitive and non-competitive when it even comes to these things. But for me, when trans women were banned from chess, with it, I think it was FINA, FINA, I think, I can't remember. That to me was just mask off. That to me was, okay, they're not really cared. They're not really bothered about the safety or equality for a sport that's entirely mental. It's then very sexist to say that men have the upper hand, and they went so far, they kind of went back on themselves.
That is at the core. To me, that actually seems like the core. And it's so dumb because it's so literally obvious. They're like, when they say trans women will always be better, like it's never fair. Like they will just say it. People will just fucking say it. They'll say trans women will always have an advantage. Like it literally just like, bro, you do not have a positive, like, you do not think much of women, man. Like that's all that says to me. The other thing I would do differently is like, a thing we could do is we could actually make sports less about these individual events and things, and we can make sports that are more intellectual, that are more group oriented. Like we could have sports where we're building interesting shit or whatever. Like think about the things where like, what is important to society? Like what I don't get is, why is throwing shit like far? Why is that an important thing we need to compete at? And like everybody needs a fucking watch. I don't get that anymore. You know what I need? I need to fucking, somebody show me how to build a goddamn bridge or cure fucking, who can cure cancer the best? Yeah. Like what, like holy fuck, like just open your mind up. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. I know, I agree. Like a competition of like how many safe and edible berries can you forage in an hour? You have a team of 5 people. And like, it can be accessible for, anyone, any kind of people in wheelchairs or anything. But like, why aren't we not watching that every year? I'd sit down to that. I know my husband would. Like, yeah. Amazing point. Yeah, I think that's blown my mind a bit, because I'm not in the kind of industry enough to even think of it like that. But what does just purely beating someone for the sake of being better than them really do? Wow.
I mean, really, when you get to the top level of sports in America too, is the realization that like the people that are at the top are people that were born with a specific biological advantage, just happen to be picked up, and then from there were supported significantly, right? They were, capital and investment went into them with the specific intent to return a profit by turning them into professional. Like that's just, you just realize like that's part, and it's actually fucking disgusting to me is the reality. Like I feel like that is so fucked up, because sports to me, I love sports so much. I love the team building aspect. I love working with other people. I love the coordination. I feel like it teaches so much. I like to exercise in ways that feel like a game rather than actual. I hate, even though like I've spent too much time in the gym lifting shit, like it's so boring. I just want to play a fucking game. Like that is just all destroyed with all of this focus of bullshit. I don't give a fuck about any of that, but like that's why, like, and that's the sad part too. Anyway,
that's fascinating. I'm taking so much away from this, and it's going to really help as well in actually like talking to these people, because especially as someone not in the world of sport, it's fascinating to hear this. It's a really good point. I started the channel and I kind of started talking about JK Rowling and all of the problems. And people that found my channel were people on her side, and it would just absolutely, it was lots of views, but not from the right people. And
is it not the right people?
Well, people on the right.
That's who you want to convince, is it not? Is that not who you want to change minds? And
I think, good point. I guess at that early level, I didn't have enough confidence to believe I would be good enough to change mine.
You weren't ready for that. Yeah,
I was still trying
to. That's not who you wanted to reach. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I might say my channel is less, or I want it to be less of a thing about, like you're saying, is about an educational thing, which is fantastic. I think mine is a little bit more of a journey of self-discovery, and and it's called matriarchetype because each of the archetypes are different playlists about a version of me. You know, one is called the wife, one is how hilariously I'm in this heteronormative relationship where when we go outside we look like, you know, gaijin A and B, you know, white couple in Japan, and then behind the scenes we're like the most socialist crazy people in the world. And so the channel is meant to reflect that, and I think that a little bit of my backstory is more about I was very much caught up in the neoliberal girl boss movement, and I loved business studies. I've always wanted to own my own business. I did for a period of time. It did really well. I worked for a huge company. I was doing all these great things, and then I had facial feminization surgery on my forehead. But as you can tell by the fact that I have one of the biggest fringes in on YouTube, it failed, and the surgery left me botched, and that's why one of my eyes only kind of opens halfway, which never used to happen. I used to be able to fully see.
Oh,
and
I wouldn't have noticed unless you said anything, but
yeah, once you say it, everyone's like, oh shit. So it left me fully unable to work because I would get headaches if I looked at the screen too long, and as an interpreter and translator I couldn't do my job. And then the company that I had devoted years of my life into dropped me like that. And so the millennial flames of socialism just started to burn within me. And I realized, like, oh gosh, if it's this hard for me, imagine if you were born, you know, less able, a disabled person, you just don't have a chance. And hold on, maybe. And then I started learning about how white people get more jobs and just my name, and learning as a woman as well, compared to my experiences as a male expressing person, how different life is. And it just, one thing led to another. Now I watch a lot of the Majority Report. Let's put it like that. But I think that my channel is more of a kind of acclamation. That it's more a declaration of, like, I don't know everything. I didn't learn properly. In the UK, we got taught a very capitalist upbringing, a very conservative upbringing. I'm unlearning so much. The situation now with, you know, Israel and Palestine, like, I'm learning the history now. And there's so much I haven't learned yet. There's so much I am, you know, taking in. So my channel it's more like, come along for the ride. You know, things will come up as we go. We'll learn them together. I don't know everything, and I don't claim to. And if you're in the same boat as me, you know, jump aboard and we'll get there together. And I've seen, like you were saying about the kind of genuine connections. I don't think there are many people that can say mid-video essay, I don't know everything. Go and talk to these people. If you want to know about this, ask Khadija and Bao. If you want to know about this, watch some FT Signifier. And that's kind of my spiel, really. I'm going to definitely have to clip that out because that was a very good little channel sales pitch, wasn't it?
That's good. Yeah. No, being able to, I mean, like, yeah, that is the difference. Is I think that's also the problem with why fucking sometimes, you know, more leftist or progressive content creators, their fucking videos are so long, is because they're so scared that people aren't gonna realize that they didn't think of that or whatever. Like, yeah. I also think that's kind of like a burden in some ways. But like, yeah, if they can demonstrate that, like, that's when I'm not looking for people to be perfect. I'm not looking for people to know everything. I'm just looking for people that, like, have done some experience and, like, have studied or a thing that I'm interested in, and then can present it to me in a way that, like, I understand and, like, makes logical sense with the other information that I have. And, like, no, obviously nobody should take information from a single source ever for any reason, you know, like, exactly. You should but like but we're also limited by time and attention that we have. Like I listen to David Pakman because he's just, like, pretty no nonsense and, like, generally, but I don't listen to him all the time. And, like, I also I have podcasts that are new. I listen to Pod Save America. I also listen to Chapo Trap House, you know, like, I like Chapo Trap. I don't know if you know these. Does Chapo Trap House say anything to you? Do you know anything about that?
No, I've never heard of it.
You should listen to Chapo Trap House. So Chapo Trap, Pod Save America, you know what that is, right? Pod Save America? Okay, so Pod Save America is a bunch of Obama staffers who created a podcast empire after they left. They were really popular during the 2016, like, that's when they got really, and they're gigantic now. They're like the leading popular progressive, like they're not directly connected to the DNC, but they know everybody because they're all ex-Obama staffers. So there's that, right? That's like the Democratic line, but, like, leaning progressive, like, they push back. Chapo Trap House is like the Bernie Sanders, like, fuck the Democratic Party, fuck capitalism, fuck that, like, make fun of everything. Like, but those are, like, the different perspectives that I get, because they push back really, really hard against like what the government says. But like Pod Save America will say this is why what they're saying makes sense, or they'll say when it's really bad they'll be like, I don't really understand this thing, like I can't put a good spin on this, like I think they should probably do X, Y, or Z, you know. Yeah, anyway,
I see. Okay, I'll check them out, definitely. I'd love to broaden my horizons a bit more outside of the Majority Report, because I do feel like I'm just scratching my surface on just that, and like I think Hassan Abi is the only two I really focus on. So yeah, thank you for the recommendation. And I get kind of a curveball question then, and just give me your kind of natural response. But as a British girl, technically talking about the US and the US politics, I get a lot of questions of kind of like, why are we talking about this? And some of the responses I give is obviously a lot of my kind of unlearning of the past or relearning of the past is how much the US gets involved and is involved. And so many socialisms that the US has just been like, nope, and just said no to them. And so there's that kind of as a background thing, but also living currently in Japan and the conflicts kind of building up with other kind of surrounding places, like it could very much affect our lives long term here. But what's kind of your opinion of like someone not from the US talking so involved and so into US politics? Like, do you have any responses of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just need to look at COVID. Like COVID demonstrated that like the reality is we are all interconnected. Like when China stops manufacturing shit, everybody is impacted. When when the Russian war happens and suddenly oil goes up, like that impacts all of us. The reality is unfortunately, like the US is just a really powerful country. It has a lot of influence over what happens, what other countries do, because it has a lot of wealth, because it has a lot of firepower and like intimidation factor to just tell people what to do, or you don't have a fucking choice, you know. Like that's the unfortunate reality, is that like we do kind of just influence shit. And like again, what I would say is, I would say in the same way we were talking earlier, it's like pay attention to what's happening globally, but don't like spend your fucking time worrying about it. Worry about what's in your local, like spend more time. I spend a lot of time thinking about Seattle politics. I pay a lot of attention to my local police department. I think again, the other big like if you would say an activist theme of my channel is like police reform. Like I sincerely think police reform is like the number one most important issue, like domestically to the United States. I think is like our cops are just fucked. Like there's 700,000 cops in it, like as part of like this fucking country, and like that's like, you know, and then like we're the most incarcerated country, like the you know, like this to me is like the drug war, like this is the problem of our country. So I spend a lot of time, and I have so much like I have so much personal experience with it that I spend a lot of time talking about it. Like that to me makes way more sense than like talking about global politics, you know, for the most part. But the reality is, like you said, the US influences everything. You should probably just know what we're doing.
Definitely. And I agree, like there's a lot more weight in dealing with those subjects than like the next Republican primary, like, which I'm ironically, like I'll ironically watch that because Majority Report covering it and I'm really involved. And then like I went after that watching it, I went with my husband and I were like getting ready to fall asleep in bed, and I was like talking about the Republicans running. I was like, and Vivek said this, and then like Mike Pence said this, and my husband just looked at me and was like, what, who are you? Like, what, you don't even know who's running in Japan. I was like, oh yeah, good point. But
I haven't watched any of I haven't watched any of them. I don't give a fuck about any of those people, because whether or not they get on the podium matters whether fucking Donald Trump ends up in prison or not. That's how I feel. And I don't give a, until that's figured out, I don't give a shit about any of that. I'm focusing my attention on other shit. Yeah.
Which is where I kind of should be as well, really. There's so many other things to talk about. But I can't believe I hadn't said so much about the police element. And obviously I know that was another kind of main milestone, I would even say, in your channel when you released the kind of video. I think it was a short I saw, but it kind of explained what happened and how, you know, the policeman pulled out a gun on you and he was not in uniform. And then that kind of threw you into the spotlight a little bit. And I would love to talk about this if you have time left, because again, comparing our kind of situations. So I lived in London, I was brought up in the UK, and my dad was a metropolitan policeman. So, and not just like for a long time of his career, but before I was born, he was a kind of out in the streets policeman. But he was he eventually developed in his career to the kind of the big policeman that stands outside at number 10, the kind of Parliament building, with a massive AK-48 gun and is in charge of like taking down terrorists if they arrive on the scene. Yeah. So when there would be bombings in London, my thought wasn't, oh my God, what's happening? It was, oh, is dad okay? And I would get a call from my mum and be like, oh, yes, your father's off today. Don't worry, love, he's not going to have died. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'll go back to school. So from my perspective, I naturally had a different opinion of police and the police force. It was my dad's job. It was like, it put food on our table, and I was very lucky as a kid. I didn't really want for anything.
Did you, and you felt like your dad was a good person, right?
I always felt like my dad was a good person, but then in all seriousness, what kid grows up and is aware of the systemic issues in which your dad is falling victim to until, I'm 7. If he brings me home a Barbie doll, I'm like, oh, you get me, and
he says he's stopping the bad guys, right? Daddy stops the bad guys. Yeah, totally.
And the worst part is that not only did I obviously fall for that, but he fell for that. And so when I had this socialist awakening, and my dad would still vote Conservative in the UK, and I'm sure it's even got over to the US, exactly how problematic that is to have a trans daughter and vote Conservative. And Brexit happened and Trump happened. And I remember actually cutting out my parents for a couple of years. And I said, look, you cannot have me in your life and still vote Conservative. I'm sorry, you don't get that. You're asking for my sisters to die. Just because I'm lucky enough to be happy and passing and think doesn't mean you get me, And so there was bold. A lot of tension. But
I'm proud of you. That's cool. I like it.
No one in my family had ever done that. It was a huge deal. I had like aunts and uncles ringing me up like, stop this, crazy. But even that to the side, I would never be able to bring up the police force. And however bad things would be, however we'd get into the good stuff, I would never be able to say to my dad, defund the police, the systematic racist police in the UK need to be taken, nothing. And so only now am I even equipping myself with enough information to feel comfortable questioning him in my mind, let alone verbally. Gosh, no. But I think the US is a really good example of how overt that corruption can be. And your video is I think as well, like your video is a clear demonstration of that. And because we live in a world where we can all have video cameras on us, we can film something and send it straight to TikTok before our phones are confiscated. And then we're also seeing on the other side a lot of mysterious police videotape being lost in evidence. And I actually think, a large proportion of this, I don't want to say revolution because it sounds a bit too dramatic, but a large shift in political, status to a more socialist and progressive state is because everything is accessible online instantaneously. People can get more information and make up their own minds. And when you see, the BLM, George Floyd, what happened there is because it was videotaped and it was recorded and people could see it, and you cannot deny that. And if you deny it, it looks worse. And we're seeing that in the UK in a similar kind of stream of racism, but how recently there was a young kid arrested or taken away by the police because he had a Palestinian flag, and it's too undeniable at this point. So I'd love to talk about your experience in that. Sorry, I held the floor for too long, but because that context, though, I think I'm still learning so much. And I think that's what kind of links back to what I was saying. So I'd love to, even if it's repeating some of the video, talk to me about where you are now with everything, how it made you feel having a gun pulled out on you by a police officer. There's so much to unpack, and forgive me if it's overlapping, but by all means, take the floor.
Let me start by saying that European, like the London police and American policing started from a very different place. And you've probably heard this, right? American policing started from slave patrols. That's true in some places. It's also some American policing just kind of started eventually out of like town watches and shit too, though. Not necessarily policing, slave patrolling, but that was definitely a big part of it. In London, it was different. In London, it was started because a gentleman by the name of Sir Robert Peel actually created the first London police force, and he had a series of like 12 rules that are actually I look at and I say, yeah, that's what policing should be, because it's a lot of shit that's like, hey, you're there because the fucking community needs you. Like, you exist as a servant. Like, and it literally puts framework around like you shouldn't be fucking with people. You shouldn't be hurting people if they're not like it. Like, don't beat the fuck out of people if they're just like stealing stuff. You know, like it's just like things that like common decency and humanity like should have. But we've been in American policing, again, we're talking about things that influence other countries. Holy shit. American policing, I have no doubt, influences other countries, which is just insane post 9/11. Like 9/11 is what made American policing just absolutely insane. You're totally right. What you glommed on is that like American policing has always been insanely corrupt and problematic, because they always have like, when you can shoot people and kill people and be like, yeah, he came at me. Like, you can just put a knife on him and be like, yeah, he came at me with a knife, and nobody's going to ask questions. In the 1970s, you think anybody gave a fuck? You think anybody, like, there was no data or like that didn't exist. Like, they were just like, oh, Charlie, you saying that guy came at you? Cool. Sounds good to me. Like, let's just fucking wrap this shit up, you know? Like, that's how it existed. It's so crazy. Like, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, which I would really encourage people. That's one of my biggest, like, if you want to be a leftist, if you want to talk about like what like it means to be intersectional and like all, like I really recommend people read Malcolm X's biography. Anyway, but like he went through the carceral system and it's just so inhumane. Like he's talking about like being in places where there's no, he's again 1940s, 1950s, just like no heating, being given like food occasionally maybe, but like cockroach, like just such horrible conditions. That is actually what led him to going into the Nation of Islam. This like it was a black separatist movement. They're saying like black people should create their own country because white people are destroying black culture, is more or less like their hit. But that's what got him into there, is because they were like, if you do this, you can get a religious exception to go to a better prison that actually like you wouldn't just die in, or from fucking malnutrition. So anyway, American policing has always been just completely fucked. So going back to my situation, I was just simply riding my motorcycle and I happened to pass a guy who was a detective. What's embarrassing is that he was a beat cop, meaning a cop that was in just a police car driving around, going to calls, doing fucking traffic stops, you know, gunning people for speeding. He was that for 25 years. He got a promotion to detective. He was driving to go pick up his body armor. They're like, hey man, we really we can't get your body armor over here. Can you go get it? We need you to just go across town and get it. We know it's like 45 minutes. Do it on the clock though. Like that's literally the situation he was in. I pass him less than a mile from my fucking home before I get on the highway on a place that I go by all the time. The street is there's a golf course on one side. It's 2 lanes each direction. Another big problem we have in America is our traffic system's totally fucked. So 2 lanes each direction is an indicator for me as a rider that like, especially if one side has no cross streets, no intersections, nothing, I can just bolt down that fucking thing, no problem. It's only a quarter mile. I mean, like I've done this a million times. Like I know exactly where cars come in and out of. Like it's just not a problem. So I do it. Yeah. I'm sitting there at the light at the end of this this stretch, just waiting for the light so I can get to work. And I look at the car, like it's just like a weird lighting or something. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, why is the car in front of me? Like, why is the paint doing like a weird lighting thing? And I go to look, and like literally the moment I look, he's there with a gun. Like the moment, like 3-4 feet away from me. Like not even enough time to assess what is happening in that situation. And my first thought with the person with the gun on me is just to like put my hands up. Hands up, don't shoot me. I am not going to cause any problems. I'm really as physical as I am, and as like maybe people would be intimidated by me if they saw me as like a biker and like I have a concealed carry. I like guns. Like I'm so nonviolent, it's not even funny. Like I would rather run from a situation than use my gun. The gun is literally like an absolute absolute last. I never want to hurt anybody. I don't even want to shoot people. But it's like the reality is I'm also aware that like I live in America where school shootings happen and people just show up to the mall. Like that's just I'm a pragmatist. So like but like I'm just like hands up, don't shoot, and he's just yelling at me. I have headphones in. I'm listening to music and I have I have a helmet on. I literally can't hear a fucking word he's saying. I'm trying to read his lips and I just see him, he's just talking and I'm just like, and I just keep yelling at him like, hey man, I'm in the middle of the fucking street. Why are like, I've been pulled over by cops a lot. I was pulled over by the cops 6 times in a single summer. I almost lost my license. This is not a new experience for me having a cop pull me over. This specific stop was insane. Like this was not like anything else. You know what I mean? Like no cop has ever stopped me in the middle of fucking traffic. And anyway, we go like 90 seconds. He finally at some point he gets frustrated with me. He's yelling at me, give me your wallet, give me your wallet, give me your wallet. I have no idea what the fuck he's saying. I keep saying, can I take my helmet off? Why are you have a gun on me? Like, why are you drawing on me? Go watch the video. I mean, like, I have a full video. You can watch the full thing on my YouTube channel. Yeah, but like, I'm just like, why do you have a gun on me? What is happening here? And I just decided I'm not putting my hands down until the gun is off me. I saw people fucking die. You know, I've seen Philando Castile was like, he went, yeah. I'm just like, fuck you. Like, fuck, I don't listen to the cops. Like, fuck you. I'm right here. And then he got so mad, he went into my pocket. And what was cool about that later is that is a massive violation of my constitutional rights. The cops are not allowed to. So pointing a gun at me does not, in a legal sense, bring them under like any like legal way where he can just go searching me and shit. Like that's actually not allowed. So when he pulled my wallet out at gunpoint, when I was like, what's happening? That was like a really bad thing that my lawyer was really stoked that I had on video. So like, he does that. And when he did that, he put the gun down and I was like, can I take my off? And he nods and I'm like, thank God. Like, and I'm like, okay, I take it off. And I'm like, the first thing I'm like, bro, can we move out of the middle of the street here? I'm really uncomfortable where you stopped me, you know what I mean? Like, so, and then he didn't realize I had a camera. And anyway, so fast forward, I end up filing a complaint. A lawyer reaches out to me. I end up suing my local sheriff's department because what they ended up doing is when I filed the complaint, the justification the sheriff gave was they were like, yeah, we went ahead and investigated it. And we've decided that the only thing that happened here that was wrong is he was discourteous to you because he kind of like swore at you. That was literally after watching my video, that was the one thing that they held him for, was that he was discourteous to me. And that was because in their policies, they didn't have written down anywhere that like the fact that if you point a gun at someone, that's not force, right? That does not count as force in a legal sense. Which is an insane thing to say because the Seattle Police Department, this is again, like maybe this is different for you, but like we have a county and then we have a city. And so I was in the city of Seattle in the county of King. And so the county is the sheriff. So the sheriff was what pulled me over, not the city. But if you go look at the city has all these like just a giant set of rules around when you point at someone at this point, this is force and this is what you have to do. You have to write it's like fully drawn out. So me and my lawyer were like, yo, you're not calling this force. The people that you literally look at that you're also in the same city of, like they have like a whole thing. It seems like you're the ones that have the policy that are kind of fucked up. And that was why they paid me $65,000. That's why they chose to settle with me. And that's why with my lawsuit, I forced them. I was like, I'm not going to settle with you unless you change your policy to say that drawing a gun at someone is force and you have to report it. So in the event someone does what happened to me again and they don't report it and they don't, first off, they have to report it. If they don't, then they're breaking the rules officially. And so there's more ability for the next person to legally sue them and cause even more damage potentially, because that's how our country works. That's how things that's how the police get reformed, not because we create laws and because we do like government to like solve it and agree. It's because bad things happen to people and like I just happen to be able to like make something happen. That's how fucked up we are. But anyway,
and yeah, you were, I don't want to say lucky because that takes away from your like, you know, your strength in doing this, but you had a camera on you, you had evidence. The amount of people that might not have been able to, you know, afford a camera and it would have just been their word against an entire organization, that's not going to result in the same thing.
Two things. yes, if I didn't have the camera, I never would have gotten it. Never would have gotten accountability because the police are always assumed to be telling the truth and like the arbiters of fact.
The word is the law, literally.
Yeah, by default, even without evidence, like that. Like no, again, going back to things people do not question. That is just by the default. So that's the first thing. I literally walked into SPD because I didn't know this guy didn't give me his name. He didn't tell me I'm with the King County Sheriff. He didn't even. I literally couldn't even see in my video. I couldn't bring any identification. Like that's how unidentified a man was with a gun on me. The number one comment was people being like, bro, he was a cop? I had no fucking idea. I would have shot him in the fucking... I would have drawn on him, you know, because I didn't know.
I was being like attacked, yeah.
Yeah, but like the I walked into SPD and I was like, hey, this happened to me, like, and I described it, and they're like, do you have? And I'm like, I have video, but I didn't trust. I was like scared of what would happen if I admitted I video. I was really afraid, like what they would do to me. And I was like, yeah, I have video. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound like a cop. You should file a police report because that person was definitely not a police. A police officer would absolutely never do that. Was what they told me. So that without video, that was completely unprovable. And I have multiple videos now where I basically describe like, hey, you need to be rolling camera 24/7, 365 specifically for this reason that insane things will happen to you. And the cops, like you will just have no recourse. But the second thing is that I was the right person because I was a white dude who was credible, who could talk, who could communicate, who, like I was that's exactly how I describe it is like, I'm not happy it happened to me. It fucking sucked. And it was definitely it was a thing that my wife says it contributes to the divorce is like that. Like it was a lot of stress for people reached out to her on Instagram were like harassing her or like talking shit about me. She can't watch the video. It's extremely traumatic for her to watch like I can't watch it. I don't feel anything anymore. I've watched it a million fucking times. She's like,
you lived it.
I lived it. But like, she is like, she hates her coworkers were talking about it. Like she could not escape this thing that she hated. It is a trauma for her. I wish it did not happen to me, but I am glad that it happened to me because I am one of the few people that would have been able to turn it into what it was. Almost nobody could have done that. So
not even just that, but I think not to get too like sad about it, but you're still here today in spite of that happening to you. And I think that we've seen for far less people being unalived, and there's nothing else you can say to that, you know. And that's the ultimate thing. And not just the US, we're obviously seeing it globally in so many different ways, but it comes down to that. Like there's a reason there are so many fewer people in minorities to fight for their own rights, because they don't have that safety net. And like I can say from my perspective as a white person, if I got stopped by the police, I would be worried for my safety, for what would happen if I got evidence. But the first thought in my mind was, tell my parents I love them. I might not make it through this episode, right? And that's the really alarming thing. I mean, I've seen some, a lot of racialized Black creators saying like, if a policeman stops you, you're not thinking, oh, let me get my license. You're thinking, am I going to live through this? Having done nothing wrong, doing everything right, am I still just unlucky? Have I been pulled over by one of the really bad ones? And like, and when I hear that, like you say, it is probably one of the number one reasons, one of the number one issues in the US, and I can completely understand that. And I think in the UK we always have such a different kind of insidious version of events. The systematic racism in the UK is never, I mean, it's that bad in some ways, but we don't have guns on every police person, you know? So there's not that initial danger of like, oh, they could just shoot me and then I can't even defend myself, you know? Yeah. And that, to me, hearing that is wild. I mean, if a non-uniformed police person or even a police person pulled a gun on me, I would assume this was some form of like terrorist act or like, a prank. I'd probably laugh because I think I was on TV. I'd be like, where are the cameras? I haven't done my makeup. Oh shit.
Where you at, Ashton?
Yeah, totally. Ashton Kutcher, are we doing a punked? Is this old school 90s? So yeah, I mean, I'm like you say, I'm so happy to hear that you made actual change, that you survived. You got a number plate that the state paid for, but it's also very alarming that you are lucky enough to have survived because you're lucky enough to have survived, if that makes sense. And kind of weirdly correlating that to the kind of trans discussion now, what we were talking about is, unfortunately, there is a lot of depiction of trans women in the kind of before and after, and a passing trans woman. And because of the kind of male gaze and the sexualization of trans women, the women that look like a real woman and stuff like that. And that goes to such a disjustice of the process of people that do transition a bit later, that aren't as passing. Again, that word's a bit iffy. But and as like you have said, like you want to change the system for people that are less fortunate. I think it's something we should all do in our other kind of situations as content creators, to kind of speak for people that don't have a voice. And within that, it takes so much research, doesn't it? And to learn about things. There are things I did not know before starting this channel that now, I have to know about, and I want to know about, and speak for. But
I think to an extent, though,
what you went through.
I think you talked about this earlier. Like, I do think that people look to content creators and be like, have an opinion about everything. It's a misunderstanding of like how much power and how much this like money and like advantage this gives me. Like, I have almost 150,000 subscribers, and like my understanding of what someone with 150,000 subscribers like got and had and how much money they had was like not what it is now. It's this realization that like none of those things actually directly correlate to how rich or successful or how easy their life is. It's just not like, because of the way that I create content, because I don't really take promoted shit, and like I kind of don't even really promote my own Patreon. Like I just am so focused on trying to make it a thing where it's like it's like a give back thing almost, like for me in a lot of ways. Like
community.
People like think that like I'm like, I mean, like I literally made, for the first time, I made more than like $10 a month in like this last year on YouTube after like 6 years. I made $1,000 one month in like the absolute biggest month I'd had ever in YouTube. But like that doesn't come close to paying my fucking mortgage, like let alone my food, like these are not even close. And like this month, I had, at that point, I was getting about 800,000 views every 48 hours. And like right now I'm getting like 15,000. So like, that's like the scale of like the whims that I'm at with like the YouTube I kind of just am like at the whims of whatever the algorithm chooses to give me with where I'm at now, which is why most motorcycle people do like sponsor content anyway. But like, my point is that like, I don't think that every creator even needs to talk or care or give a fuck about anything. I think that's actually really fucked up. Again, going back to like, we're just fucking human beings, man. Like I just, like if you get if you're popular on YouTube, like it's luck, it's maybe your skill set, and it's like how you look and like all these things. But like, I don't think you need to do that shit. Like if you don't want to, I will probably talk about things because again, I feel uniquely immune to a lot of things in some ways because of how like honest, like my brand is kind of being pretty honest and like kind of whatever. Like I'll tell you when I fuck up. Like I don't care, but like, I don't think you should feel obligated to.
I think it depends on the subject, obviously. Like I'm not about to make a whole video about the historical political climate in the Middle East. That would take me a new degree. But like obviously within my section of things, like it's like the bare minimum for me to understand about neopronouns.
If you want to, you should do it. Absolutely.
For sure. I guess I'm saying this with the undertone of I want to, but like in a way, and this is the highest form of compliment, but because you express as a cis white male ally, you have like already got like super bonus points for what you're doing for us, because honestly, and you said similar in some of your content, just this freeze frame of you now with the diversity trans flag, pride flag behind you, and your how you express your appearance, it does more than I ever will be able to for trans rights alone. Because of course, as a trans woman, I'm going to advocate for trans rights. Like most people have switched off in the first 10 seconds of my video, but you do more for the communities that you're not a part of. And there are times when like I've had Soul Bunny. She's a small creator on my channel. Maybe you've heard of her, but she's a really young Black trans woman, and she goes through an entirely different thing than I do on YouTube. She's been doxxed by quite a well-known channel, which is terrible. She's like looking to move. It's been horrible. And I will always have more space for her on my channel than me. Like if she wanted to come onto a live stream and I cancelled everything and I just let her talk, because that it's the least I can do for clearly a disparity in fairness, just innately, systematically, you know? And so like you were saying about the fact that you being a white person in that interaction with the policeman is probably a reason why you had such a good outcome. It's like, we have to be aware of these things, you know. But I get your point. We don't also have to be aware. I think the difference for me is being aware of everything and commenting on everything. And I think that's the jump. Like, I might learn a lot about a lot of different things, but I'm not about to comment on it. It's not, I don't know enough. I don't have enough confidence, and it's not my place.
I think it's the Spider-Man rule. With great power comes great responsibility. You, as a trans woman with 2,000 subscribers, do not have great power. You do not have great responsibility.
Good
as
point.
A white man who looks decent, who can talk, and again, I talk about this trans ally video, as someone who can sell, as someone who is aware of the realities of this world, and who has friends and people that I fucking love so much who are negatively impacted by the society we've created that treats trans people like fucking shit, I feel obligated to do it. I don't feel like I would be being a good person if I just if I didn't. And I guess that's an internal thing. Again, I try not to judge other people by that standard. I also, again, I also lucked into, I lucked / whatever, like interested into like a job that pays me a reasonable amount, that like, I've always been into technical things. So like making the jump to like doing like editing, video editing has always been an interest I've had. So like I created my own football. The first video I ever created was a football highlight video after I left for colleges to try to send to them to get them to recruit me into like, whatever. So like, that's what I mean. It's like with great power comes great responsibility. We don't all have to do it. If you have the ability and you want to and the drive, then you should. You know what I mean? That's how I feel.
I completely agree. That's a great point. And I'd love to use that for another essay I'm doing. I'm literally looking at a video essay about content creator responsibility. And I think I actually used that quote in the script. So I might just have you read that out if that's okay. Because
sure, whatever. I love to do. I never get asked to do anything with people. I reach out to all these like the small and big people that are smaller than me now, like way smaller than me now that I've gotten popular, and people that are bigger, and nobody cares about me. I'm like, okay. I would help you, but all right, whatever.
I swooped right in. Well, I think that's actually something else that we were talking about, like why we have our channels. And I think that is another one for me. Like I love sitting down and talking to someone and hearing their experience and making correlations and learning things. But specifically about responsibility, I think I don't really think in most modern history people have, there are a wide group of people, all creators, all influencers, celebrities, as it were, that have like so much responsibility and power. I think that's quite a new thing for anyone to just come across. And so we see, for example, on TikTok, if you have a very normal family, normal couple or whatever, or person, they go viral, that's instantaneous success. And it involves an element of management, of money, sensibility, of calm, of responsibility. And I actually know an accountant that has, deals with a lot of instantaneous famous people that come into loads of money and they don't know what to do with it and they blow it all. And some of them have addictions that a huge amount of money is not necessarily good for them and stuff. So I'm really interested in this whole idea of responsibility. And as a very small creator myself, I can already see the kind of sparkle of like, hey, hold on, people are listening to me. And that can be an alluring thing for many people. And then you look at Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and the terrible side of this that are clearly being funded to say some terrible shit. Or
they're just really bad people like Steven Crowder. They're just pieces of shit.
I don't know what I want to believe.
Total pieces of shit.
What's worse? Yeah, they generally are advocating for a genocide of a minority, or they're getting paid to be an advocate for a genocide of a minority, which is worse. Exactly. But it's a fascinating topic, and I think it's one that we're only really having to deal with now because, again, like Khadija Embar says in their recent video about like celebrities at one point were just celebrities. They weren't expected to comment on the political climate of the global, Western majority. And it's like now suddenly that it's expected of people. We're finding out that actually they're not as lovely as we thought. And it's created this kind of anti-parasocial, Like the downfall of J.K. Rowling is probably the biggest millennial representation of that. One of the most monetized and lucrative IPs of modern times is now a shitty mobile game where, you know, the graphics are terrible and that's all about what she's getting, really. Like, and that's because of her extremely problematic views. And I think that's both a wonderful and terrifying thing all at once.
No, it is. It's interesting. It's a democratization of influence is how I kind of think about it. Because before, like, celebrities, right? Like, who made Brad Pitt? Well, Brad Pitt was a very attractive man who could act. Cool. But it's also Harvey Weinstein and all these other motherfuckers who are probably giant pieces of shit who in reality control our, you know, because they create media, because they're part of these, you know, Rupert Murdoch. Like, who does Rupert Murdoch put on the fucking TV? Like, that's Tucker Carlson, right? Like, these people are artificially created as influence. And yeah, the bucket, the orifice, as Steve Jobs might call it, is, you know, these fucking media companies and shit. And so what is cool about YouTube, and again, what I feel is like so empowering, is like, it is a democratization. It is where you and me can have conversations and where we can be super real. And if people are looking for a real connection, which is what I think a lot of people are looking, especially like as our countries kind of get more fucked up, as like capitalism kind of gets more late stage, more like the shit just kind of like gets worse and worse. Like, people are just like, please show me something real. Like, stop lying to me about the way things are, you know? Like, I feel like it's very powerful. And again, that's why I'm so attracted to it. It's why I love creating videos, because I think that, like, looking into somebody's eyes through the camera, I think it builds a deeper connection than podcast or anything can, or like audio can do. And it can help convey information in ways that like change how people think. And like, so that is why, again, like, I don't feel like creators should feel obligated. But if you want to, in the same way that like I've been creating motorcycle content for 5 years, and then I get really high one night and I'm really fucking angry about how my friends are treated and about how shit is existing, and I write 3,000 fucking words, which is the baseline of that Trans Ally video, because that is literally how it happened. I was insanely high, and I get kind of emotional when I'm like, and it just like, and it had been mulling in my head for months, and I was really fucking upset about it. And like, again, it was a deeply personal issue to me. And like that is where I feel like the real, like, that is where like the real human connection comes, and where with that becomes change, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. And it was possible because you had access to the infrastructure that allowed that video to be created, platformed, and sent out there. I mean, that is a side of modern technology that we have never seen before. And like you said, it's a complete paradox to the kind of Hollywood celebrity famous side of things, and the very manufactured music industry, where we're now seeing a bunch of celebrities from that time period losing their marbles a bit and going through some really hard times because they were at a very young age scooped up by people now that we know are very problematic, you know. And we're seeing it's almost, I love how you described it, the kind of, what was it? The
democratization. Yeah.
Democratization.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Not easy to say. Democratization. Yes. It's almost like, I do think that about YouTube and social media. It's obviously a very capitalist fueled system, but we can of course turn the steering wheel, and suddenly now everyone has a voice. And like you say, it's safety, it's cameras on motorcyclists, it's evidence in courtrooms, it's
having a million people watch a video I made saying that I fucking don't give a shit about the American flag, and like seeing what conversation that creates, and seeing people be like, yes, no, and like getting and like getting into these like real central issues of like, why do we care about this nationalistic symbol? Anyway, yeah,
completely agree. I think that that's coming at the forefront with Israel and Palestine at the moment, and I won't go too much into that, but the backlash of what's clearly propaganda from one side, that we're getting like adverts talking about certain things coming up. A lot of people are saying they're seeing like actual propaganda from Israel saying like a different narrative of what's happening, but people have social media, people have on the ground recollection of of what really is happening. And I don't think that the kind of old-fashioned systems are capable of dealing with that change. So it's kind of an opportunity for, like you say, activism and people to kind of say, look, actually, this is my experience, and actually, that's different to the main narrative. And like you've said, for the trans community, and like you said about the police system, like it is having an effect, and it's such a sad time to be alive. But I think there is also a huge potential and opportunity there. But then I get very optimistic. It's really funny to just talk about my husband and I. We have such a different opinion of how like capitalism is going to go. He's the most pessimistic. He's like doom scrolling about climate change. He's like, we're all going to die. This is terrible. Like, I don't even want to have kids because they're not going to live. And then there's me, this like little butterfly flying around. It's like, no, it'll be fine. We're all just going to change the world, and like everything's going to be great. We're going to just all become activists, and capitalism will just burn itself out. And it's sure going to be in the middle of those two things.
I would tell your husband to just not worry about, don't think about that. Think about what you can do in the next month to make your life, and like maybe like that's, like with my divorce, with all my life situations and changes, as I've experienced more like harder times, moments where I'm like really sad and not feeling good, the more I'm just like, why am I thinking so far in the future? Why don't I just think about the thing that's in front of me, that I'm like, the things that I enjoy right now in this moment? Like that has been the biggest like thought technology right now in the last like summer that I've developed, is just, again, after releasing these videos and talking to more people and engaging with so many more people, so many more trans and queer people that who are describing their experiences and are like Sarah, who are going back to like the trans athlete one, where Sarah describes this like very difficult reality of her like knowing she was different, and totally different in a way that nobody around her could like connect to, and like just realizing like, oh my God, there are so many of these people out there, and so many people having these same experience. Like all of that has just been like, oh, well, what I should think about is like, I should really just focus on the people immediately around me for the next week, month, 6 months, or whatever. I may die in the next 6 months. Memento mori. Like we all fucking die. We don't know when it happens. Why am I focused on 5 years from now when like I may never fucking get there? Why don't I focus on right now and being happy and helping the people that are right in front of me?
Yes, that's completely fair, and I think in a similar vein, I've really taken on a lot of advice to just like fill your cup first, and before you try and do everything for everyone, just sort yourself out. Like you said, like talk to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while. Check on them first, then a random person that you haven't ever spoken to before. Yeah, I think I'm definitely trying to do that.
Are you taking care of yourself is a really important question, and that's
a
lot of the most, and that's also the sad thing. Like all these people I've met who have been, again, many queer people and like people that are in these communities, is like they're so empathetic and caring. Like they are so willing to like take their shirts off for other people, but they are so hesitant to either ask for help or to like prioritize themselves or over other people, which is like, you got the airplane, there's a reason they say you got to put your mask on before you put your kids on. Like you just,
so this is something
people don't realize that if you're capable of helping people, you are actually already above a lot of people in our own reality. So we really need you to take care of yourself first, because if you can do that, then you will actually help more people.
Absolutely. And that's something I remember asking a lot in the interviews I've done previously to kind of bounce off that. And even on my Discord server, one of the chats is self-care, to get people to talk about this. So how do you practice self-care? What's your go-to, unwind routine? I mean, keep it clean, guys. Keep it clean, Alex.
Do I say how often I masturbate right here? Is that what I say? No. Look, I think a sex life is important to have, whatever that is for you. Anyway, my self-care routine is, I exercise a lot. I enjoy physical exercise. I walk my dogs every day, like 2 miles, like minimum. Like I love walking. I love getting outside and just like looking around and seeing things and just like existing in nature. Honestly, I find that to be really, I also worked from home for 3 years during COVID, like, cause I have a tech job, and like now I don't, I have to go to an office, but like, I hate going to the office. It really inconveniences me, but it does connect me to the outside world in a way where like sitting in my house and kind of just like talking to people in Discord, as much as I enjoy that, it like doesn't do that. I find that variety again is the spice of life. Like the more variety I personally experience, the more I enjoy. But that is, I'm also somebody who's like ADHD, and like I find the randomness like to be enjoyable, and the surprise and the spontaneity. Physical exercise is like critical. I just think that's really important. Like, I also, again, in recent years, like, or in recent times, like, especially right now, I've spent more time just like talking and engaging with people who like make me happy when I'm around them. Like that is a thing that is again newer for me. I got a girl, again, I'm going through divorce, but like I got a girlfriend and she makes me so happy when I'm around her, and I'm spending less time creating YouTube videos, like like the actual editing process, but I'm spending more time like thinking and processing and feeling, you know what I mean? And like that to me, like I feel like when I output after doing stuff like that, the output is so much more of such a higher quality as far as being able to transfer the information and connect at like a deeper level when I've done that stuff, you know, rather than sit at home and like whatever,
and just turning it out. Yeah. And I think like I'm the same in that I enjoy that bit the most as well. I enjoy the creation part of the video essay. I love to think about the set design and the hair and makeup and the costumes. And then once it's done, the editing, when I'm like time coding small bits, I'm like, oh, I hate life. Why am I doing this? And so allowing myself to take my time on the fun bits is like I really agree, is a great form of self-care. Watching that video and in like kind of getting a bit more understanding for this, and I had never seen the protests on the ground like that, and with everything also going on at the moment, when I watched that I cried. I fully broke down into tears hearing the explosions and because it's different hearing like, you know, the force was taking hearing that explosion, and I like broke down into tears. My husband just rushed in and was like, what the hell? Like I think things have changed. I think 2020 as a year with COVID and with everything like that, like you're saying, once you take off your rose-tinted glasses about the situation and the kind of neoliberal understanding of capitalism, the free market, once you realize that's all bollocks, you can't go back to believing it, you know? And I've got so many millennial friends that are hitting 30 as well, and they were the most capitalist of anything, and now they're coming to me and they're like, I just want to live on a farm, grow some herbs, and live out my days.
They're all 30 and they're realizing, oh fuck, I don't have a house. I don't have a great relationship. I don't
back pain already.
I don't feel safe making children because I don't feel financially stable enough. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, I'm more see a lot more of the kind of eastern side of things, but the China population problem, the Japanese retirement and population issue, like it's coming for the West. I don't want to sound like a doomer, but like, you think that people not having babies until they're 40 years old is going to not have an effect on the best country in the world? I can't wait to live out and see what happens to the West when no one can have children, and that generation doesn't grow up, and all we're left with is like people burnt out with back pain at 40. Like you see me touching my shoulder, like I'm just recovering from a cold, and my neck's killing me. Like I can't.
Donald Trump has like 6 kids and I have 0. So like if you have a question about who's going to run this country and who's going to make shit happen, and like, if you aren't worried about that, if that, it's something to think about.
So then just let trans women go to the toilet. Like that's the hilarious connection of like,
I don't care. Again, I'm going to die. And like, I can't save society. I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. Like, kids are like, again, I can't afford kids. Like I feel great. Like there's plenty of people out there who I realize need mentorship, and I'm totally happy to help and like assist as much as possible. I don't need to like create my own, is how I kind of feel. And like, again, I can't really afford it, is the reality. Even making, what is considered a good wage in my country, in my city, I do not feel financially stable that I could have a kid and retire reasonably. In fact, I literally am like more and more, I'm just like, I'm not even thinking about retirement. I'm just going to plan to die 60, 70, at some point before that matters, like is truthful. Like that's as a motorcycle rider, like I'm probably going to die, whatever. I just don't think about that.
I had in the corporate like years, I worked really quite high up. I was proud of my wage. In the UK, it was a good wage. I had a private pension for that time. I now make nothing from YouTube. I barely make enough to like for costs. and my husband is the sole provider. He has a very low salary as an English teacher. We are, counting our pennies to get food. Bless us. But, we're happy. And like the pension company were like, when you're 70, you'll unlock maybe a few £1,000. And I was like, it was like viscerally sick. It was like, if I'm alive then, you think that that's going to do evil to my life? Like, I'll maybe be able to afford some like drugs in the retirement home to have a good week. Like, that's going to mean nothing. And
I can afford enough morphine to kill myself with.
However much euthanasia costs, it will be a down payment.
Yeah.
To end it all. Like, literally.
I might need a loan. I might need a loan for the difference.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I could talk about kids forever. My husband always wanted to adopt before we even met. And obviously I've never had that as a biological choice anyway. So that was a great connection that we had. And so we do want children, but that's because we really actively want them. And, and so we'll joke about the future of the world, but it's something we want to do. So we
want children at 60. That's when I want I don't want children now. Like, I want children when I'm fucking old and like I don't have anything else to do,
I just feel like I feel myself getting so old now, and like making noises when I stand up and creaking, my bones are clicking, and I'm like, I don't know if by 60 I'm gonna have enough energy to take my kid to the park. Like, and I keep pressuring my husband. I'm like, we need to have kids before I hit 40 because I don't know I'm gonna be the best mom otherwise.
We can get you on an exercise regimen. My parents are insanely athletic and they are still playing softball and very active. You don't have to get old and crinkly as you get old or whatever.
Jokes aside, if I help you with thumbnails and anything else I can do, would you help me a little bit with like exercise stuff? Because I know nothing, and sure. I really want to get into it like for fun. I'm trying to get back into dance just for the fun of it.
Sure, 100%.
Great idea.
Easy. You're in my Discord. We have a fitness channel. Yeah. Like, I've got like power lifters and shit that like, yeah. Anyway.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna check it out. Well, I'm going to wind it down because I feel just too bad for taking all of your time.
Yeah. We should probably wrap up. I should go to bed.
I'm looking at it's like 2 p.m. in Japan now. Like, well, how long has it gone on?
It's only 10 o'clock. I go to bed at like midnight, but yeah, we're coming up on there. But yeah,
we're good. But well, thank you so much for an amazing chat, an amazing time. Like, it's so refreshing to have loads of thoughts of things and then hear someone else say the exact thing, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Yes, I completely get that, and connection made. So thank you for your time. I'm so grateful. I'll be in touch with the kind of other editing stuff if there is anything. But yeah, if there's anything you need from me, please reach out. Feel free to ping me on your Discord, and I will be happy to help. But yeah,
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Here, I'll give you a quick bumper. All right, just in case you need this. You don't have to know, but my name's AJ. I make a YouTube channel called Squid Tips. It's nominally about motorcycles, but I also make it about things that are important to me, which are trans issues, queer issues, policing, a lot of stuff. Look, I'm entertaining. Just subscribe to me, watch me. You'll enjoy it. If you don't like shorts, watch mine and see if I can't convince you that short form content can actually be valuable, because I feel like that's what I've done. And actually, you should watch did you watch my video on like my best practices for short form content? Because I made one.
No, I've got to check it out. I haven't seen it. I apologize.
So for 100,000 subscribers, when I got this thing right here, which I dropped, you can hilariously. I literally have I was fucking around with it in my backyard, and I put it on, and it like fell. I have it on video and everything. I was just like, wow, like 5 minutes after I opened it. Anyway. But for my, YouTube subscriber to make like the thank you, whatever, like what I made was like, hey, because I got this, I feel like I've got a little cred to be like, hey, here's my advice on what I think is good on YouTube. So I made a video that was like a best practice on YouTube Shorts.
So we'll check it
out. As part of it, it like kind of does the advice as part of it. So I thought it was I was pretty clever. But
I'm going to check it out 100%. That is exactly what I need to be watching.
Okay. Well, it's been great talking to you. And yes, I will hit you up with your thumbnail advice and to make me some. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
And let me know if you need more patron advice and about tiers and everything. Anything I can do at all, genuinely.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
You too. Have a good day.
Bye.